Me?
All right, welcome tonight. I'm happy that we have Becky and we have Kiera with us. Our focus tonight is about healthcare during incarceration. And Becky, I wondered if you would just tell us a little bit about your healthcare crisis while you were incarcerated.
Hi, I'm Becky. I spent 5 years at the Ohio Reformatory for Women. And in my first year there, in fact, my first several months there, I was sentenced to prison in September. And that January, due to just general, I wasn't the healthiest when I went in. And I guess also due to the fact that they don't provide enough warm clothing and things like that, I ended up coming down with double pneumonia in January. I begged for help. I'm an asthmatic too, so with somebody with double pneumonia, which all I knew is that I couldn't breathe, I was begging to get a breathing treatment. I was begging to get an inhaler, my albuterol inhaler refilled, or whatever they would do. After not getting treated for probably 4 days before I was actually finally got to see the physician and finally got an x-ray of my lungs because I was so bad off even in the infirmary, sorry. They finally got me on medication, but I think one of the hardest things for me that I think traumatized me almost about the entire experience is not so much the waiting to get medical care, but once my double pneumonia was so bad after not getting care and they finally put me on prednisone and antibiotics, the rule was that in the middle of January, in 23 to 27 degree weather, I would have been put in the hole or gotten in severe trouble if I didn't go to the infirmary outside in the middle of January, low below freezing temperatures, to get my medication 3 times a day. And I stood outside anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes each time waiting on my medication. And I had to do this 3 times a day. And it was at 6 a.m., so it was extremely cold. And I think being unable to breathe, knowing that you have double pneumonia and certainly should not be out of bed, those are some very serious concerns. Another experience that I had, which wasn't even necessarily with me, but I will never forget, listening to a gal that was in our dorm. I don't even know her name right now, but I listened to this girl scream and beg in pain for over a week and a half, begging to go to the infirmary. And I guess the COs and the medical staff basically treated her like she was pill chasing or something. By the time this girl finally got to the hospital, her appendix had already ruptured. And she stayed in the hospital with all kinds of toxic side effects from that and severe infection from that, and ended up being hospitalized for 3 weeks. Those sorts of things are just unacceptable. And when you hear someone crying out in pain for over a week and a half, my God, if those screams are forever embedded in me. And that's just 2 of so many examples I could give you, but I think those are 2 that are important enough that it should wake you up and tell you that something is gravely wrong with the system.
Becky, can you tell me a little bit about family calling in? Because I know I see people say, can you call such and such an institution and ask for medical care for my so-and-so? Is that a thing? Does that work?
That's an extremely common situation. Not necessarily my family, because I only had my daughter to rely on. And she was only 18 or 19 or 20. So it was difficult for me to ask for that help. I did call my estranged mother once when I was going through needing the treatment for the pneumonia. And by the way, I got the pneumonia shot after I had that severe bout of pneumonia in 2009. Got the pneumonia shot, was not supposed to be able to contract it again for 10 years because of the scarring in my lungs from the double pneumonia, because I was already asthmatic. And I ended up getting double pneumonia and went through the entire scenario of standing outside for the medication again in January of 2012. And then I was released in 13. But because of the scarring in my left lung, every single fall that it gets below freezing, that left lung flares up right about right here. And I get like deep pains when I breathe in. And obviously it flares the asthma, but I attribute that to the fact that they didn't treat me quick enough. And the double pneumonia got so severe that it scarred my top respiratory portion of my left lung.
Wow.
Yeah.
Steven?
And many more examples than that. I can tell you of 5 women that I know specifically that in the 5 years that I was in there being treated for asthma, you're locked in a cell in the infirmary and you can wait anywhere from 1 to 3 hours before a nurse comes back to even start your breathing treatment. And in my time of being in the infirmary every day to get my daily mental health medication, I know specifically of 5 women that were locked in those rooms and died of asthma attacks, and the entire ORW was shut down. Of course, they put everybody on lockdown, and you can't come out of your dorm, and everybody has to stay on their bed. So you're aware when somebody dies. Like, it's the whole prison is shut down while they call and do their investigations and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, and 5 of those incidences of when there was a lockdown for a death on the farm, is what they call it, the farm, was due to asthma and being locked up in a room where, and you can beat on the door and they're just not going to come. That's all there is to it. They're just not going to come.
Wow.
So yeah, we've lost 5 girls that I know of just to asthma attacks.
Thanks for sharing, Becky.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a response to that madness?
Every time I hear your stories, I am just speechless because I can't imagine. So first of all, I just want to acknowledge your strength for being able to go through that process while being sick and coming out and healing and being able to live a decent quality life. So first, you should be so proud of yourself for making it through. And in my opinion, the COs and the system doesn't get to decide who lives or dies. And the way that the system is set up right now and the procedures for healthcare, they are making that decision for you guys. And that's where I have an issue. When you deny care or you delay care, that is making the decision that the lives of these individuals are not a priority. Because what they could do is bring in more care professionals to speed up the process of getting people seen, especially with women, right? Because we know that women have more healthcare needs. They require more maintenance, both, physically, mentally, aesthetically. Women require more care. That is a fact. To be a facility where you're holding women, that is something that should be known. And CEOs and whoever, is caring for you guys should be trained and educated on that fact and should not deny you of that care for whatever reasons they're doing that. And so to hear that story just reaffirms why I'm doing this and why it's important for you guys to continue to speak out, because people don't get to hear these stories. They don't know what's going on. People are outraged at the fact that you guys are not getting the feminine hygiene products in a timely manner, but they're not hearing about the long-term effects and the permanent scarring that you have on your lungs due to a simple treatment, right? Like pneumonia is treatable, asthma is treatable. And for have permanent damage because someone didn't value their life and didn't value your needs in a timely manner is just unacceptable. And so I'm so sorry you had to go through that, but I'm so thankful that you're here to tell this story because it's going to help so many other women. We want women to come forward and we want them to realize that this is illegal. You have human rights, you have civil rights, and in the care of these facilities, they have to honor your civil rights. So I like to explain it in the terms of like childcare, right? Unfortunately, when people are incarcerated, they are put out like you become completely dependent upon the facility for all of your basic needs. They tell you when to eat, they tell you when to get dressed, they tell you when to shower, they tell you when you can wash your clothes, just like you would do a child. So when you don't feed a child, when you don't bathe a child, when you don't take a child to the doctor, that is considered abuse. It's considered neglect. And what happens is we don't see that same connection when people become incarcerated. But when you frame it in that way, it's like, oh, yes, you know what? We do reduce these people to children where we tell them what to do all the time and how to do it. But we don't make the connection of we also have to take care of these individuals. So there's a stigma around people who are criminalized, and that is what validates this treatment. So you speaking up, right, is helping to end the stigma, helping to restore your humanity, and really show the world that you're a human being. Regardless of why you're in there, nobody knows why you're in there. Nobody knows, and it's really nobody's business. You've paid your debt to society, and now you're out living your life. And while you're in there, you deserve, as a human being, to have your basic needs met. And as a woman, you can't just cut corners with certain things. As a human being, you can't cut corners with certain things, with your health being one of those things. We can't cut corners when it comes to your health, regardless of your incarceration status. We would, if we did that to other people, if we did that to children, if we did that to the elderly, we would call that neglect, we would call that abuse. They don't get away with that in the nursing homes. They're not supposed to get away with that in the nursing homes. This is the same thing. When you are under the care of another person or a facility, they have a responsibility to take care of you. So I just wanted to say thank you for speaking out. And I want you to know your rights. And I want you to know that you not having the care that you needed in the appropriate amount of time is a violation of your rights. And so my goal is to get these stories out here so that people realize that the human rights of individuals who are incarcerated are being violated on a daily basis. If you were free and you weren't confined to a cell, you would have been able to call an ambulance and go to the doctor as you needed to. But since you could not, waiting even 3 days is unacceptable. And it's their responsibility to provide you with the resources. So if they don't have enough doctors to be able to see all of you, that's not your responsibility. That's their responsibility to figure that out. And I think now it has become our responsibility to change the narrative so that people don't validate the way that you guys are treated. So I'm so sorry that you had to go through that, but I'm really glad that you're here and you're living and you're okay and you're breathing. So just thank you so much.
We have Kiera with us tonight. Kiera, are you able to unmute and share a little bit about your healthcare crisis while you were incarcerated? Maybe. While Kira's doing that, Sarah, do you want to unmute and tell us a little bit? Sarah's situation.
Can you hear me?
Oh, wait, we have Kira.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm getting my lashes done, but I'm still listening.
Do you want to share or do you want to wait?
I can share.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, as I've told before, I was 17 when I caught my charges, and I had just turned 18 and got bounded over. So this is an experience while in the county jail still. Well, I was pregnant. So when I first came in the facility, they test you. They give everybody a pregnancy test. So they were very aware that I was pregnant. Um, when I went upstairs to where I would be housed at, I was sleeping on a hard floor maybe for like 2 weeks. A hard cold floor, no mat, nothing. I guess because it was overflow, it was overcrowded. Well, when I finally did get in a cell, I started experiencing some spotting. I don't know if it was because I was stressed out just about my situation or what, but I was maybe like 9 weeks pregnant, 9 or 10 weeks pregnant. So I started experiencing spotting, and I had talked to my mom, and she was saying like it could be normal because I've experienced this as well, pregnant several times. She said, but just watch it, keep an eye on it. So I notified the COs, and they put me on like what they call a pad count just to see how much, I was bleeding or spotting. A couple days, like a day go by, and I noticed that it got worse and that I was experiencing some pain. So they have like a button, like an intercom in the county where you can press and call the CO or get help. And I reached out to the CO, and I told her like, hey, I'm 9 weeks pregnant. I'm experiencing some spotting. And she said, well, what does that have to do with me? And I just was so sad because I didn't get the help that I needed. So I tried to wait for another CO to come on shift, and another CO came on shift, and I told her the same thing. They finally sent me out to the hospital. So I went to the hospital, and I was handcuffed to the bed, and by the time I got to the hospital, my baby's tissue was coming out. So it was too late. But I just used to think like, maybe if she would have helped me in time, I wouldn't have had to go through that. And after I came back from the hospital, they just threw me in a cell. I didn't get any pain medicine. I just had to go through it. I didn't get any counseling, or anything. I just had to stuff that pain and not talk about it. So that was, I can't say, one of the biggest things with healthcare while incarcerated that I've experienced. And I still have, scars from that, and just dealing with that by myself, just never being able to get it out or talk to anyone right when it happened, and just kind of blaming myself or whatever. But when that CO said that to me, it just was like, how could you be so insensitive? And you're a woman yourself. I just didn't get it, and it kind of like scarred me really. And yeah, so that's an experience that I had while incarcerated, dealing with the healthcare.
Kira, that's a lot. Girl, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Kaylin, I'm wondering, we have about 10 minutes left on this Zoom. Should we go ahead and hear from Sarah since she's here?
Yes, please, because I'm still trying to gather myself from what I just, so yes, please.
Sarah's situation is a little different, although I'm sure she's had some healthcare crises, but hers is about mental health. So Sarah, can you share a little bit about your crisis while you were incarcerated? You're on mute, girlfriend.
When I was locked up, I have PTSD, and I have generalized anxiety, and my anxiety is bad. It's bad now, and it gets to the point where I can't leave my house. I can't. I'll get stuck in the bathroom for hours. I can't answer the phone. It's really hard for me to like speak out and like come to these things because my anxiety is so high. And when I went to prison and I was around people all the time, it was awful. I got sick every day. They give everybody like the same 5 drugs for mental health, and it didn't matter what I was on. None of it worked. It didn't help. And they just didn't have any help. You didn't talk to anybody. If you did, it was like every 6 months or something. If you weren't there for over a year, they didn't help you at all. You know, you couldn't see the people. You couldn't see the dentist if you had a year or less. So, I mean, I had 28 months, but it's just ridiculous like that. They don't care. There's nothing they can do. And it's just like whatever the drugs are that are the cheapest, that's what you're getting. And there's so many different psych meds. Like I've done gene testing now that tells you what, you know what I mean, what meds will work and what won't. And I had a really, really hard time in prison. DCI was much better because I was in a cell with just one person. But because of my mental health, when I got out, I just felt like I was raped of all of my, I don't know, my personal space, I guess. And I can't, my level of functioning, like I just fought and I got my son, and, you know what I mean? I work on my mental health all the time. I talk to counselors and everything, but it has increased my anxiety so much that it's so hard for me to do anything. I'm scared all the time. I'm scared that I'll go back to jail, or something like that will happen again. And that's how I feel. I feel like I was just raped of my rights, and nobody cared. It didn't matter what kind of health issues or what was going on. Nobody cared. You know what I mean? You're just locked in there with everybody else. I had a child right before I came to prison, and they didn't do, I had 2 hard pregnancies because I shattered my hip in a car accident, so I didn't expand. It was a hard birth. She got stuck. I went to prison right after that, and I went to the gynecologist once. When I got out of prison, I went to the gynecologist and I had to have reconstructive surgery. I had a 9-hour surgery. My bladder had fell on my uterus and it had collapsed. And because they didn't check up, they didn't do any follow-up after I gave birth to my daughter. None. So I didn't even know that. I mean, it was just, and it was really embarrassing. So that was just last year when I finally got it fixed.
Wow. Wow.
Oh,
We have about 6 minutes, 5 minutes remaining. Kaylin, can you take us to the end?
yes, I guess I can. Well, I guess I'll start with Kira. So there's this common misconception that if you have female COs, that they would be more understanding. And the more research I'm doing and the more that I'm talking to women, I'm finding out that that's not necessarily the case. I think that it's not about a man or woman thing. It's a systemic issue at this point where there is an attitude about people who are incarcerated that is adopted by everyone. They're trained, right, on how to deal with some of these problems. So I don't necessarily attribute her attitude to her gender. I attribute it to a systemic problem. So Kiera, I am not surprised actually that your CO, your female CO responded in that way, because there's training that goes on, and that's a part of what I'm trying to do, is to change the way that we see people who are incarcerated, right? They're trained to see you as a number. They're trained to see you guys as like, kind of like a train, right? Like 1, 2, 3, check, 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 just making sure you guys are all there and you're alive every day. The bare minimum. But we know that human beings cannot survive off of the bare minimum. And so first, Kira, I am extremely sorry about the loss of your baby. And I hope that you're able to get the counseling and things that you need for it. I'm not sure how long you've been out or how long ago this happened, but you know, I've never had to experience this personally, but I definitely empathize, because I could not imagine going through something like that. So I just wanted to thank you for being here and being courageous and telling your story, because we do have women who go into prison pregnant and don't have the opportunities or the platform to be able to tell their story and talk about what it's done to them. And I mean, we don't even have time to really go into the whole psychology of what happens after a miscarriage and things like that. And to not get any care or any follow-up after such a tragedy, to me, is just a reflection of how we feel about inmates and how we feel about women in general, because this can be applied to so many different sectors of society, of how we just don't prioritize women, how women are expected to do everything and be everything for everyone, you know, but we don't cater to their needs. Like, women have babies and they only get 6 weeks with their babies before they have to return back to work. We've created that society and created that kind of environment. And so to me, this is a reflection of just how we treat women in general, but it's definitely exacerbated when you are behind bars. And it's so important for people to know that and to hear these stories. So thank you. And for our last story, I am just I'm so sorry that this is happening, and I'm laughing because I'm in disbelief, right? Like, I can't believe that this is the world we live in. People think that these things don't happen here in the US because we're a developed world, but these things are happening here every single day. And because you guys are shipped off to some facility where no one can access you or find you, they're able to treat you however they want to treat you. And I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. And, you know, I've struggled with mental health problems. And so I know how overwhelming it can be to just exist every single day with those issues. So to have the added stress of not having your children, to being taken away from your familiar environment, to being locked away with other people, I can only imagine how that made you feel and worsened your situation. So I just want to commend you for being here and talking about this, and, you know, being that example for other women who are going through this. So I want to thank you ladies so much for your time, for your stories. We could sit here and literally talk about this all day, and there are thousands of stories like yours. I have not heard of one woman that came out of prison untarnished, or came out of prison without some type of health issue, whether it was mentally or physically. And so you guys are so brave and you're so courageous for telling your stories, and it's going to help a lot of women. Heidi, I don't know how much time we have left. 1 minute? Okay, you're muted, so I'm trying to read your lips. So
Sorry, I said we have less than a minute, but we'll do another one.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Thank you ladies so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.